Welcome to A Real Authority. The movie's not even over. We're finally getting back. Shut off.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a Star Wars fan, and yet I have this lightsaber. That was a true clip from my showtime of Mandalorian and Grogu. Surprisingly enough, the power went out in the entire theater, and so I had to wait like 20 minutes for it to resume. They kind of didn't resume it where it left off, so I kind of had to wait a few minutes in order to actually fully enjoy the movie. Funnily enough, this is even the first time that I did it. Last Memorial Day, or around that, Lilo and Stitch came out, and the same thing happened. Thought this would be a lot brighter, so, I guess, yeah. Woo, woo, woo. I haven't used this in a while. Yeah, sound effects. Wow, wow, wow.
So the premise for this theatrical continuation of the Mandalorian series is that Mandalorian and Grogu, a while after the events of the Season 3 finale, I'm pretty sure, but they're basically tasked with retrieving the son of Jabba the Hutt for two of his relatives, I guess. I guess that's as simple a plot that I can describe. Granted, Mandalorian in general, like each episode has a simple plot, so it kind of makes sense for this movie to also follow that blueprint. I guess starting off with my thoughts on Mandalorian and I guess Star Wars, starting off with Star Wars, even though I have this, not exactly a major fan, I of course seen all 9 of the main Skywalker saga movies, in which, like many people, I have grown a fondness for the prequels, not really into the sequels, or at least The Rise of Skywalker. Though I haven't seen it for a little bit of time, I actually like The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, though, I kind of haven't revisited the sequel trilogy since I saw that, like, a few years ago. Yeah. And I haven't really gotten into any of the other, like, Disney Lucasfilm projects, save for Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I unfortunately haven't seen Andor. But for this movie, I decided to go and try to watch Mandalorian. I already tried watching it a few years earlier, and because I'm not a big Star Wars fan, and I don't know, I guess I just wasn't as into the Star Wars franchise as I am now, which is to say a little bit of a difference. Yeah, I really did enjoy The Mandalorian. Mainly the first 2 seasons. Season 3 is by far the worst one, and it was one that I just felt was a drag and a challenge. I got done finishing it yesterday, and I watched the last 5 episodes of this series, and it was just hard for me to actually care. I really do feel Season 3 is a major downstep. Despite having a lot of the structure and the formula that the first 2 seasons had, aside from the writing to really back it up in terms of returning and new characters. Like, I would describe Mandalorian as a whole as a pretty situational show. What I mean by that is that each episode feels like a situation happens to advance the plot like a video game. It's a bit odd in terms of the fact that this is a TV show, not a video game. Although I will say the first 2 seasons were really good. Season 1's definitely the best in my opinion. I understand that Season 2 has a lot of great callbacks to other Star Wars IP. I get it. I don't want to take that away from you. I just found the first season had a lot more organicness to it. And I did see the Book of Boba Fett, only the 3 episodes that Mando was in. I didn't really care about the entire show, because even though I wasn't into Star Wars, I could hear about how divisive a Star Wars show is. And I did hear that for the Book of Boba Fett. Even though talented actress Sophie Thatcher's in it, apparently, I was still like, nah, just here for Mandalorian. Then again, I started my binge like 2 weeks ago, so I didn't really feel I had a lot of time to waste, I guess. Aside from me seeing and reviewing the movies that I reviewed before this video. But yeah, after Season 3, I was kind of like fearing that this movie wouldn't be as great as, well, I hoped it would be. And also, you know how sometimes a movie gets such critical acclaim that, unfortunately, my attempts to avoid it just fall on deaf ears? The same thing happened with the mixed reception that Mandalorian and Grogu had. I tried my best. Before a movie like Mandalorian and Grogu, if I might as well humor you with a metaphor, blinking runs the risk of hearing what other people have to say about the movie, even if it's just one word or a thumbnail. But I still try to have my own expectations, even though it was pretty hard for me to not feel anything but worried and feel it might be a mixed bag. Also, before I binged the show and also before the second trailer came out, I wasn't exactly high on the fact that this could be actually a pretty good movie. Because even though I'm not immersed in Star Wars, I understand the Star Wars fandom's exhaustion with Disney Star Wars. But after the second trailer, my expectations kind of rose, and then Season 3 kind of squandered them. But at least I could tell you, even if it's not exactly a great movie, and I'll get to it in a minute, I did know, and I was proven right, that this movie would not be as bad as Season 3. Like, there's seriously no way it could be as bad as Season 3, and thankfully it's not. But it is something where I actually do not know what to give it in terms of a rating yet, so I might as well talk about the positives and the mixed elements and the negatives, and let's see where I land upon the end of this video. Starting off with the positives, I really do feel the best part about the Mandalorian series as well as the movie is Ludwig Göransson's score. He is a talented composer known for such projects as Sinners last year, in which he won that original score Oscar like a champ. But he's also been commonplace in the Mandalorian series, enough so that even though the episode overall might be great or weak, Göransson's score usually manages to be a standout in terms of selling the emotions as well as the drama. And here it continues, but it also, like the series, injects a bit of an experimental flavor in which it uses Star Wars music, namely the Mandalorian theme, and just tweaks it in a way that just makes it sound pleasing and unique, and it doesn't really feel out of place. So I have no complaints with the score. Of course, it was going to be stellar. And I do feel the acting, like, even though a lot of this movie is really focused on Mandalorian and Grogu, which, by the way, Pedro Pascal is doing a tremendous performance. He did so in the series. He's doing so now. There were other standouts, namely Jeremy Allen White as Jabba the Hutt's son. I forgot his name. I mean, it was a ridiculous casting, but I feel in the final product, he is by far the most interesting character in the entire movie, because Martin Scorsese isn't exactly anything more than what you saw in the trailer. No spoilers, but hey, it's Martin Scorsese. He's good in anything, I guess. But I feel like Alan White just transforms into this different character. Granted, we only hear his voice, and the CGI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of making this character come to life. But I don't know, I just felt like his voice acting was just surprisingly strong, and you can't tell that it's Jeremy Allen White. So I really do feel he was a standout, and by far the most interesting and engaging character in the movie. I wish the movie focused more on him. Director Jon Favreau is the creator of the Mandalorian series, so it kind of makes sense for him to direct his own movie as well as write it alongside Dave Filoni, and I forgot the other writer's name. So I do feel like his direction and writing really try to paint a continuation of the Mandalorian that feels in keeping with the Mandalorian. And I always felt with the Mandalorian series, it felt like, although structurally it does make sense for it to be in a TV show, the execution kind of makes it seem like they were being held back by the fact that it was a TV show. So it kind of made sense for it to turn into a movie after seeing The Mandalorian, and I do feel Favreau does make that transition from TV to screen a lot of the time without any hurdles. CGI is strong, practical effects are of course great. I really do feel the Star Wars franchise is at its best when it comes to practical effects, although I will say it might be overshadowed by the CGI, unfortunately, but it still makes it so that the practical effects are noticeable and just well done. I do feel for the most part, the movie's not exactly running into any pacing issues. I say for the most part because I do have some issues in general with the movie pacing-wise. But I will say for 2/3 of it, it's actually pretty steady. Not to say that the movie is exactly being perfect or anything, but you know what? Even a weak movie can have the ability to have sturdy pacing. Before I forget, the first 20 minutes of this movie, like, they were hyping the first 20 minutes up as absolutely a delight, and while it's not exactly a masterpiece, I really do feel it's a solid reintroduction to this world and just overall a solid intro to the movie, especially since it was filmed for IMAX, and I was lucky enough to see it in IMAX. So yeah, first 20 minutes overshadows the entire rest of the movie. Mixed complaints, I feel like it boils down to the screenplay. Again, Jon Favreau really does have his hand and love for these characters. And I don't know if it was exactly his fault that season 3 turned out to be so rough. And I do feel that was a huge barrier and a huge obstacle that this movie had to overcome, was justifying a continuation after the pretty dire season 3. And I do feel there are a lot of moments where it does justify its own existence and justify the continuation. But going back to that transition from TV show to movie screen, like, I really do feel there are a lot of bumps there. And I do appreciate the fact that they focused less on the situational factor in terms of, you know, being episodic or something. This movie has a straightforward plot instead of, you know, having that many side plots. There are some side plots here, sure, but it still has an overall focus, and I really do feel that needed to happen for a movie like this. I feel like if it stuck to its situational nature, this movie would have been a lot worse, but I'm glad it didn't. But I really do feel in terms of the TV show and the movie, while in execution, they both look pretty similar, which means that if you're expecting, like, something that goes beyond the TV show, like, look and appeal, you might actually be disappointed. But I do feel like structurally it's definitely a lot different in terms of setting up the characters, getting you into the story, as well as just overall having a fun adventure. So I'm kind of mixed on that as to whether or not it worked or not. I feel like it's an equal balance, good and not exactly great, at least to me though. Oh, and also this movie really has a lot more comedy on average than, like, the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. Granted, the comedy in season 3, that was just out of place. Who the hell thought Jack Black and Lizzo were good casting decisions? I'm sorry, it just took me out of it. Here, I do feel they try to go back to the grounded roots of the first 2 seasons, but they still interweave comedy into it to mostly mixed results in terms of, getting the theater to laugh. Like, I understand Grogu's cute and all, but I really do feel his appeal as a character is more than just his awesome design. It's more or less the development as well as the relationship he has with Din Djarin. So having comedy interweaved into this movie really doesn't do anything to change the movie in a better way. It just feels kind of pointless. I don't know, that's mixed. But now getting into the negatives. Again, 2/3 of this movie have strong enough pacing for you to actually be engaged, even if the screenplay is not exactly great. But I feel when it comes to that last 1/3, it does slow down significantly, in which you can point out numerous places where the movie could actually end. And I feel like they kind of course corrected so much and came upon an ending that kind of is the safe option instead of probably the most effective option. I don't know, I really do feel that this movie is a bit too long at 2 hours and 14 minutes. Like, the fact that the last 30 minutes makes up this last half kind of makes it so that you could have easily trimmed it. I understand what they were going for, but I really do feel in terms of consistent pacing, it really doesn't do a good job at keeping up that consistency. And maybe a lot of the reason why this movie is such a bit of a mixed bag to me is the fact that I do feel that Mandalorian perhaps works better as a TV show, while here it kind of feels like the story that we're trying to tell is kind of limited. Like, again, it doesn't have as many side plots as you would expect from the Mandalorian TV show because it doesn't make sense to. But I think this story would have still been better suited, not just because the Mandalorian was already a TV show. It kind of feels awkward to transition from TV to movie, but I really do feel in terms of this story, it would have been better if it was fleshed out. It probably would have been a breath of fresh air to not have as many side plots as the Mandalorian TV show before it, because although seasons 1 and 2 are good, the situational nature overstays its welcome with season 3. It just does. Thankfully, it's not as situational here, so it could just be me being like, it could be better if it did this. Speaking of season 3, I really do feel that this movie had a large hill to overcome, and again, it does somewhat overcome that hill in the fact that season 3 was so not good. Because again, there was no way this would be any worse than season 3. And thankfully it wasn't. It was actually somewhat fun and somewhat entertaining. Another positive before wrapping it up, the action was actually solid. Like, Star Wars is always known for having fun action. I do feel with The Mandalorian, one of the standouts outside of the score as well as the story was its action. So yeah, it definitely continues to have fun action here, which I definitely can always respect and appreciate, but also it's pretty cool Mandalorian action. I guess nothing else to say outside of the fact that Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu are just The Mandalorian and Grogu. Take your pick. It is an entertaining continuation of The Mandalorian, but one that does not exactly justify its own existence, mainly because Season 3 struggles to justify its own existence. I'll give Book of Boba Fett a pass because it really does put a bow on what Season 2 ended off with. But I do feel if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, whether or not you vibed with Season 3 or not, there's enough here for it to work for you. It's not exactly the return to the big screen Star Wars kind of needs. I mean, it's probably going to make a butt ton of money. I don't know, a proper reboot of the Star Wars franchise is going to be difficult, and The Mandalorian begun as Rise of Skywalker stunk. I do feel like if you're a major fan of Mandalorian or Star Wars, this movie is almost guaranteed to be a theatrical experience. Everybody else is kind of just going to be lost, even if they wait till streaming. Overall, The Real Authority approves for streaming. 6 out of 10. But if you're curious, you can watch it in the movie theater. I will say that, but IMAX is probably your best bet. Even though this movie wasn't exactly great, for some reason I'm still looking forward to Starfighter because the cast and crew just seems solid. I don't know what else to say. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, and comment your thoughts on the movie, and let me know what your Star Wars movie ranking is. Maybe include the TV shows too. If you want to keep it to just the Skywalker saga, that's fine too. May the Force be with you and all that. Gee whiz and prosper. I don't know. I do not watch Star Trek either. Gonna head out. Happy Memorial Day. Alright, peace.